Hello and welcome to episode 60 of the Epic Classroom Podcast. My name is Trevor and I like to talk about teaching, whether it's stories and ideas from my own classrooms or lessons I've learned from other educators. I love to explore ways to help students grow and thrive in school, but also for their educators to thrive as well. And so that's what this podcast is. Whatever you teach or however you serve in schools, how can you lead a more impactful, dynamic, meaningful, and epic classroom? Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I got to be honest with you. I had a whole different episode in mind than the one that this one is going to be. I was going to talk about something that's going to be on next week's podcast that I find really, really fascinating about students' attention span and focus and how that hasn't actually changed as much as we think it has, but instead the world and technology and what students want to give their focus to has changed. And so I've been doing a bunch of reading and experiencing and teaching and work around this, and I was going to do a whole podcast on that today. But then, if you've been paying attention to the news, yet a few more tragedies have made it across the headlines and onto our phones and into our lives and into our hearts and our minds and our students' minds. You might have seen the political assassination of Charlie Kirk that happened this week. And you might have heard about the kids who were shot in a school in Denver this week. Or maybe you're paying attention to some of the atrocities that are happening overseas in Ukraine, in Palestine, and in Israel, and in Sudan. And I mean, just it's an unending thing, this list of tragedies that exist. And then after some of the big events that happened yesterday with Charlie Kirk, and then more school shootings, and then, but then also thinking a week ago, a shooting in a Catholic school. It's like, man, I think we need to talk about this. And I'm recording this right now on 9/11. I don't know when you're listening to it, but it is the 24th anniversary of 9/11. And man, all of these tragedies that seem to just continue to pile up remind me of when I was in 6th grade and I was in Mr. Peters' class. And I remember our principal coming into the room and whispering something to Mr. Peters and watching his face go ashen white. And then when the principal left, he announced to the class that there had been a tragedy. Something terrible happened in Columbine, Colorado. And he told us 6th grade kids, which, by the way, my little boy, my own son, Jack, is in 6th grade now. So it's like, man, this story just brings back so many emotions as I see my own life and his life and eyes. And I remember Mr. Peters saying, so there has been a shooting and a bunch of kids have died. And so I actually have to escort you to your next class. And I remember just being absolutely frozen because at this point in my life, nobody had heard of school shootings really. It wasn't a thing. And all of a sudden, this reality was introduced to us. It was introduced to a classroom of 6th graders. And I remember watching this teacher of ours. I remember watching his eyes well up with tears. And he kindly and quietly guided us, escorted us to our next class. And I remember in that moment feeling lots of different things. But one of them was that it was okay to be emotional during difficult things like that because Mr. Peters was. So I guess it's okay if I feel and act this way as well. I remember during 9/11, the morning that happened, I was a freshman in high school. And I remember sitting in band class that afternoon after just a whole morning of watching the news and seeing the towers fall and hearing the panic and just seeing all of this. And I remember our band teacher, he said, you can put your instruments away. We're not going to play today. And we all sat there in quiet as our band teacher looked at us. And then he said, guys, after what happened this morning, the world is never going to be the same. And I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. But we have each other. I remember him saying that, and man, the whole day was about like, who did this? And who are we going to go to war with? And who's going to pay? And it was all just frantic and angry and fearful. And our band teacher said, I don't know what's going to happen, but we do have each other. And man, that meant something to me in 9th grade. I remember when I was teaching the day after the Sandy Hook shooting, And my students came to school that day absolutely afraid, absolutely as if they experienced their own trauma from that event. And they came there, and I remember one group of students came up to me and they were like, Mr. Muir, can we talk about this today? And my initial inclination was like, no, I don't know. I don't want to talk about this because I don't know how to talk about this. As a teacher, I don't know how to talk about school shootings. I don't know how to talk about elementary children dying in a classroom. I don't know how to address those horrors with my students. I don't know how to make you feel okay or feel better. I'm not trained in how to do that. I'm trained in teaching kids how to read and write and learn history, and I can build relationships and do this, but I don't know how to handle the trauma of a global event like this, of a tragedy that occurred. But instead I said, yeah, we can talk about it. And we sat in a big circle that morning, and for about an hour, we hardly said anything. I just gave space for kids to talk when they wanted to cry if they needed to express anger, sadness, whatever it was, however they needed to. But most of it was just, we're going to sit in silence. And I could just feel this peace overcoming my classroom. And I could see that peace was in part a response to my own peace and my own calm in the classroom. Right? Like, students often look to the adults in their lives that they respect, who they respect, for cues on how to handle things like this. Right? Like, there is a lot going on in the world today. As I said, I mean, it was just yesterday. I'm recording this on 9/11. Just yesterday, Charlie Kirk, a big figure in American politics, and a lot of people look to him for wisdom and guidance and respect or ideas, whatever. A lot of people look to him for guidance, and then he was killed yesterday, and it was caught on camera, and it was horrific. And you better believe that students are going to school today wanting to talk about it, wanting to dissect it, wanting to metabolize it, wanting to be angry about it, to be sad about it, wanting to respond the way that they've seen their parents respond to it, or that they've seen political leaders respond to it, or people in media respond to it, or what they've seen on social media. There is a lot of students who want to respond to that tragedy for good reason, right? Like, that's what we do, is we experience things and then we want to digest them. Right? In the same way, there was another shooting yesterday. 3 more children were shot in a school in Denver yesterday. And it's like, yeah, that's the type of thing students need to be able to express or understand or do something with. Or in the same way, last week, there was another shooting. It's like students want to do something with this. And I don't have the answers, by the way. This podcast is not about, hey, here's how you need to respond, because that's above my pay grade. All I can tell you is that students are looking to the adults in their lives for how to react to this type of thing. Right there, I think I shared about it in a podcast recently about this idea of emotional contagion. There's actually this phenomenon in human beings that we are able to share our emotions with other people, right? Like, students can look at our facial expressions, at our tone of voice, at our body language, and they will actually adopt our own emotions. It's how laughter spreads. It's how, one person's panic in a crowd can shift to everybody's mood. Right? Like, and so this is a phenomenon that's true. And I think the way I talked about it is that a teacher's passion can become a student's passion, right? Like, this is why I think teachers will always be necessary in school, because there's something about the way that we as educators can become passionate about a subject, about an idea, about a concept, and we're able to expertly share that passion with others, and our emotion becomes theirs as well around it. So, like, that is such a fundamental part of being an educator. But this also connects to what we're talking about here, the way that teachers and principals and administrators and counselors and parapros and school secretaries and anybody who works around students, the way you respond to tragedies will often be mirrored by your captive audience, right? Educators, we have a captive audience. Students are looking for us for cues on how to react to things. And, and I got to be honest with you, there's been times as an educator, as a teacher, where I haven't reacted well to things, where I take my own emotions and I bring them to school and I let my own anger show. And then all of a sudden students carry that same type of anger with them. But then conversely, I've noticed during the many different tragedies that I have taught through, the way that I am peaceful and calm and reflective and conversational and open to discussion about them and open-minded about them, that is also passed on to students. They are looking for how to do that, right? Over time, modeling healthy emotional responses helps students build resilience and coping skills, right? It's not saying, hey, you have to have all of the answers, right? Like that's just not what it is. We don't have all the answers. And also, there are people in the school who might have better responses or better answers or better ways of handling things. And I think one of our calls to action when we are responding to tragedies with students is to involve counselors who are trained for this type of thing, involve school social workers, involve administrators or resources, whatever the appropriate people and expertise is, bring them in on this type of thing. We don't have to do it alone. It's not the expectation at all. But I do think it's okay that we acknowledge reality, right? It's okay to name what happened rather than to just ignore it. And I get the temptation to just ignore it. If a student came into school today and was like, did you hear about what happened with Charlie Kirk? It might be really easy to say, you know what? We're not talking about that. We've got to cover math today. Or nope, we're not going there. This is not a place to do that. We're not doing that today. We've got reading to do. Listen, I get the temptation. It makes things go a lot smoother sometimes, or at least on the outside looking in, it looks a lot. It can feel a lot easier to just say, nope, we are ignoring it. We are moving on. But man, I don't think that's what the response should be. I think at the very least we can acknowledge it. Say, yes, how sad. Oh, yes, I did hear about that. That is so hard. I remember when I was teaching during the Las Vegas shootings, which was just an absolute tragedy. And I remember kids came in all mad and angry. There was a lot of anger tied to that one, I noticed. And man, it's like, yeah, do I want to talk about gun laws? Do I want to talk about mental health laws? Do I want to talk about some of these things? Yeah, maybe. And those are discussions I think we should have. And I think, I personally got to have those discussions with friends and people I talk to. And even on social media, there's places to have those discussions. But with my students, my posture was, oh yeah, that is really, really sad. How do you feel about it? Right? Like, how's it making you feel? Oh, you're not feeling safe? Yeah, I totally get that. That is really difficult. There is just this power in listening to students and trying to find some calm, peaceful response to their fear that passes on to them. That's emotional contagion. And I think that's our call to action, right? I think we can model calm and compassion. Even if you don't have all the answers, your steadiness provides stability. And we can allow space. We can create space for silence and questions or brief discussion if students ask for it. I think those are all good things. I think also if we are going to create space for the discussion around it, which, by the way, this isn't to say, oh, no, you have to let kids sit in a circle and discuss every single tragedy. You've got to let them go on and on about what happened with Charlie Kirk or school shootings or war. It's like, no, the reality is we do still have life to get on with. We do still have to read. We've got an exam coming up we need to be ready for. So it's like, no, I'm not saying we have to cut out all of our class time to do that, even though I do think there's some times where maybe we do need to create more intentional space. Because if students aren't getting it at school, can you rely on them to have this processing space elsewhere? Well, hopefully, but not necessarily. And so I think we can create space, but also it's to say, you know what? Yeah, I hear you and I acknowledge it, and that is tough. All right, let's get on with class and just know that I hear you. This is a hard thing to be going through. So I think that's appropriate. But also, if we do create space, I think we have to create boundaries. I think we have to review with students, hey guys, when we talk about difficult things, here's some expectations for when we talk about it. We are not fighting with each other. We're not debating with each other. We're sharing our thoughts and hopefully giving space to let them out. And maybe you'll get some new ideas, maybe not, and that's okay. But we are going to be respectful with each other. In fact, I've talked about this a lot, about class discussion and having difficult class discussions. That's why I'm a really big fan in practicing discussions with students over and over, so that when they have realistic moments where they need to have a discussion, it's not their very first time having to connect with each other, right? That's why I have a ground rules for class discussion poster, which, if I remember, I'm going to make a little note I will put in the notes of this podcast. It's just a discussion norms that you can go over with students before any class discussion, where you say, all right, before we begin our class discussion, let's go over a couple ground rules to make sure that we're all on the same page about this, right? Like, hey, we are not going to talk over each other. We are discussing, we're not debating. If you need clarification, you need to ask for it. If you disagree with somebody, that is fine, but you need to be respectful in doing so. Having these norms and reviewing them with students and letting them know, hey, we can have these discussions. We can talk about the difficult things, but we need to do it respectfully and within these boundaries. I think that is perfectly okay. I think that's actually essential for covering some of the difficult things in a classroom. So maybe having something like that, but also, again, knowing that it's just not on you to have all of the answers or to say all of the right things or to give your own opinions on everything. I know that school really isn't the space to share all of our political views or our specific beliefs on this. That's not really the point. The point is to create space for students to be able to digest and work through the difficult things of life. Because these tragedies, they're going to keep happening at different times. That's not to say that they can't get better. I have hope that we can learn from difficulties and we can see less of these. But life is inevitably hard, and difficult things will inevitably happen. And so, as educators, as the people with the captive audience, as the people that are so respected by students, it is our job to model how we react to some of these things, how we react to the tragedies that happen. Because the truth is, if we don't show students how to react to tragedy, who will? Well, hopefully their parents. Yeah, absolutely, hopefully. But I think we all know that not every parent is going to prioritize how they react to tragedies, and maybe it's not done healthily or whatever. That's beyond my understanding why, but like, if it doesn't happen in parents, can they get it all from social media how to react to this? I think that's an undeniable no, right? Because you can go on social media and see how people are reacting to this, and it's really ugly, right? If you see how people are reacting to this tragedy that happened to Charlie Kirk, look at the people on the far left and the far right and how they're reacting and the vitriol that's being spit. It's like, that's not a good model for students. And then you look at politicians. Are they doing it well? I think we'd all say nope. By and large, they don't always do it well. How about political pundits and the people on media? Are they showing how to react to tragedy well, with resolve and clarity and peace and calm? Are they doing it well? I think the answer is no. And so if students aren't getting it elsewhere, which sometimes they are, by the way, right? Like, absolutely, some parents and some people in media and students have other mentors outside of teachers. So it's not all squarely on their educator's shoulder to do this modeling. But I do have to say, a lot of students don't have mentors outside of school. And that's just a sad reality. They might not all have pastors or youth leaders or community center members or family members, fill in the blank, who are modeling how to respond to difficult times. And they rely on their educators to do so. And so I guess I just want to sum it up by saying we have to be those people that are really intentional about responding to difficult times like this. I hope you can recognize the influence you have in shaping how students navigate tragedy. In the same way that Mr. Peters helped me do it with Columbine, in the same way Mr. Trapp and band did it during 9/11, in the same way that I tried my very best to do throughout the many different school shootings that have happened, I hope you can be someone who models calm and peace and resolve and humanity for your students. Remember, your peace becomes their peace. Your calm becomes their calm. And in hard times like these, that might be the most important lesson you teach. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next week.